Now I'm going to show you guys the most underutilized tool inside of Revit. Now remember, in Revit, it's all about systems. So let's go ahead and create a system of all of this stuff that we just placed in our model. So I'm going to use a window selection, and we're going to select all of the equipment and air terminals that are going to be inside of this system. So once we have it selected, you can see Revit has this little button up here called Duct. Now what this does is it will create a duct system, and then we can go ahead and modify that duct system after we create that system. So I'm going to click on it, and you can see Revit's going to ask us, hey, which system do you want to create? Now, right now we can only create supply air, and that's because these air terminals are really only for supply. And then we can also change the name of this, but I'm going to go ahead and use the mechanical supply air 1. That's totally fine. So we're going to click on OK. Now what that did is it created a system, supply air, and it named our system mechanical supply air 1. So once we have created our system, we can go up to generate layout, and we can start to automatically lay out our ductwork. Now Revit will do this pretty much for us, so it's really cool. So let's kind of position these views a little bit so you can see the 3D a little better. And I'm going to kind of zoom in. Now anytime you're using this tool, you really want to make sure you're looking at a 3D view so you can see what Revit is proposing. So since I'm in the 3D view, Revit's showing me the route that it wants to take to connect these ducts. But from the floor plan, I might want to actually see what that looks like. So I'm going to click into the floor plan, and you can see this is the view that or route that Revit is going to take. Now I might want to modify that route a little bit. Maybe I want the ductwork to come over here first and then go across and hit these ducts. So luckily Revit gives us some different options or different solutions. So let's click on the next solution button up here. And that one looks perfect. That's exactly what I want. I want it to go over and then cross right here. So I'm pretty satisfied with this, so I'm just going to hit the finish layout command. Uh-oh, something is wrong. Now, you guys are going to get this all the time when you're drawing ductwork. Now, almost always what this means is there is not enough space to place your fittings. So let's see what Revit says. There was not enough room to place the required fittings. Consider increasing the length of the segments or moving them further apart to generate a solution. So what Revit is saying is, hey, you didn't give me enough space to place this fitting, so I can't just make up a fitting. I have to have enough space for this to work. So knowing that, let's go ahead and bring this main duct up a little bit so that we have enough space to place that fitting. So let's just X out of here, and let's hit the undo command. And luckily, Revit will go back to that automatic routing for us so we can kind of manipulate this thing. So the way to manipulate the height of this line right here is what we can do is we can click on Edit Layout. And what that will allow us to do is select each branch or supply main and change the elevations. Now what I want to do is I want to kind of change all of these at the same time. So we actually have to use a different technique. I'm going to click on Solutions again, and you can see right now it says Custom. Let's hit the drop down and go back to Network, and you can see it's the first solution that it came up with. We're going to hit the next solution button, and this is the one we wanted to use. But you can see there's this tool or a little button right here called Settings. Let's click on that. Now we can see that there's some settings associated. We have a main and we have a branch. So our main is this duct right here, and then our branches are the ones in green. So the main's in blue and the branches are in green. So maybe we want to put our main up to 10 feet. Okay, and then we'll click on our branch, and maybe we want our branch to be 10 feet as well. So I'm going to click OK, and you're going to watch that it brought the main up and the branches up to 10 feet. Now that looks great, so maybe I want to try that. So let's click on Finish Layout, and would you look at that, we automatically drew all that ductwork. Now I love that command. I think it works really well. It doesn't work way faster than just automatically connecting things, but it does save some time. So since we're talking about routing ductwork, we might as well talk about routing preferences. So every single duct has its own preferences for the routing. And what I mean by that is it has its own preferences for what kind of T's to use, what kind of elbows to use, all of that kind of stuff. So if we click on any piece of duct and click Edit Type, you can see that there's routing preferences associated with this type of duct. Now remember, this type of duct is the rectangular duct, and the type is radius, elbows, and T's. If we hit the drop down here, there's all these different rectangular duct types. Right here, this one has taps, this one has T's. Now the biggest difference between these is the routing preferences. So let's click on T's and let's click on Edit Type again. And let's see what happens when we click on Edit Routing Preferences. So now we have all of the routing preferences that are assigned to this type of duct. So right now you can see the first one is this radius 1.5W. Now this 1.5W is the size of the radius of the bend. So maybe we want to change that to maybe a shorter bend radius. So maybe 1. So we can change that right here. Now we can click OK and click OK. And now when we draw a duct, our duct will be using a shorter radius. So let me show you what I mean by that. So let's actually undo those routing preferences. So I'm going to go back and undo the modify element attributes. Okay, now let's go ahead and draw some duct, and I want to show you the difference. Here's another trick. Anytime you're going to draw something in Revit, remember you can always right click on the element and create similar. So since I want to create the same duct as right here, I can click on it and right click and say create similar, and now it will create that same type of duct. So we're just going to draw this duct right here, and you can see that it made this long radius elbow, okay, because that was its routing preference. So let's click on the duct again, and let's go to Edit Type, and then this time we'll click on Routing Preferences, hit Edit, and we'll change the radius, remember like we did, to that 1W. We'll click OK, and now let's take the same duct, we'll right click, create similar, and let's make the same route. So we'll click this up and click it across, and as you can see, now our routing preferences are set to use that short radius elbow. So that's how you change the routing preferences. Now speaking of change, these ducts are kind of dark. I can't really see them that well because I'm using this black background. So let's go ahead and update this duct color. So to do that, we need to click on the duct, and we have to go up here to Duct Systems, because right now Revit is coloring these ducts based on the system. So we click on Duct Systems up here, and we can actually edit the type or the color of this system. So we'll click on Edit Type, and you can see right here there's graphic overrides. Let's go ahead and click Edit, and right now it's this dark blue, but I want to make it this brighter blue so you guys can see this a little better. We're going to click OK, we're going to click OK, and click OK. And now my ductwork shows up a little brighter. Now what you can also do is you can use the thin lines command and turn it off. So if I turn off my thin lines command, you can see everything gets a lot thicker. Now the thick lines command, or when you turn off thin lines, it basically is displaying like it would when it prints. Okay, so we can talk a little bit about visibility graphics real quick. So right now, the thing that's controlling the graphics of this ductwork is the system overrides. So if we click on our duct, we go to Duct Systems. Right now, if we hit Edit Type and we go to Graphic Overrides, this is actually controlling all the displays on all the views. So think of it as a global display setting. So anytime you have something on a system, it's going to globally control the line thickness and the color, okay? So it's important to know that. Now, what we might want to do is right now the weight is set to no override. We could override that to anything we want. So if we want to get the colors a little, or the lines a little thinner, maybe we set that to like 2 and hit OK and click OK. And now you can see that our line weight changed to a smaller line thickness in both of our views. Now remember, that was based on the system that the duct was on. So let's draw another piece of duct. I'm going to use the Create Similar to draw some more duct right here. Let's just draw it like that. Now if we change this duct to a different system, so maybe instead of supply air, we change it to return air, you can see that the graphics are changing because now it's on a different system. So if we wanted to manipulate these graphics, we would click on it and we click on Duct Systems, Edit Type, and now we go to Graphic Overrides, and instead of pink, let's just make it, I don't know, orange. Hit OK, hit OK, hit OK. And as you can see, we've changed this duct to orange in every single view because the system is going to always override all the other visibility graphic properties. All right, that was a little bit much, a little tangent there, but it is important to understand these things. So the next trick I want to show you guys is, remember, we changed the routing preferences of this duct. So now when we draw our duct, it uses this short radius elbow. But Unfortunately, it did not change these elbows right here. Even though we are using the same duct type, it did not change these elbows. It only will do that if we use a certain command. And I'm going to show you guys that command right now. So since we changed the routing preferences, all we would have to do is tab into all of this ductwork. So let's tab into everything by hitting the tab button a bunch of times. So we hover over it, hit tab twice, and click. And now we have all of this ductwork selected. So since we changed the routing preferences, we can use this command up here called reapply type. And what it will do is it will reapply this type of ductwork that we changed, and it will update the routing preferences. So let's click on reapply type, and it automatically changed all of these elbows to the short radius depending on our routing preferences. So that was important because now what we can probably do is lower this duct a little further down. Now we want to lower it to a point where we still have a little bit of this duct so it doesn't break. So let me show you guys how to do that. So there's a couple different ways you can manipulate duct elevations. You could just click on the piece of duct and just change the elevation up here. So let's say I wanted to change it to 9 foot. I would click that up here. But again, we're getting some error messages saying, hey, you made it too low. We can't do that. So Revit's going to yell at you when things are not possible. So I'm going to hit cancel, and we could try it again. So maybe this time we go to 9'6". So anytime you're typing in a distance, remember, you can always use the shortcut by hitting 9, as that's for feet, hitting the space bar, and then hitting 6, and that will be 9'6". Hit enter, and look, it automatically drops the ductwork down to 9'6", and we still have a little sliver of duct, so everything works. Okay, that's a little trick. So let's undo that. And I want to get this even closer. Okay, I don't want to have to do the math in my head. I want to be able to just move that as far down as possible. So let me show you guys how to do that. We're going to click the undo command. And now let's go ahead and show you guys a couple different techniques that I like to use. Now the first technique, which I think is the best technique, is to use the 3D view to manipulate your ductwork. So I'm just going to kind of zoom in on this 3D view right here. And you can use a 3D view kind of like a section. And that's the beautiful part. So I'm going to click this left button over here, and you can see it automatically positions my display kind of like a section. So now I can click on a piece of duct and I can zoom in real close, and I can just use my arrow keys and nudge this duct down. Now if you just use a single arrow, it will do it very small, but if you hold shift and do it, it will make larger increments. So I'm holding shift and I'm going up. You can see it's going faster. And if I just use my regular up arrow key, it goes slower. So let's hold shift and go down. And we're just going to go down as far as we can. And then when we get close, we'll just use our single arrow button and we'll just go until a point where it breaks. Now Revit's saying, hey, this is too short, but that's okay. I can just hit cancel. And now we've basically dropped the duct down as far as possible where it won't break. So if I click on my thin lines again, you can see there is a little sliver of duct right here, but we've connected everything to a good location. So that's my favorite way to do it. I'm going to hold shift and we're going to reorbit that view. And now you can see we're probably in better shape. So I'm going to click on left again, and what we want to really do is we just want to make sure that our ductwork is not above this ceiling. So I probably should have mentioned that. That's why I'm lowering this duct, because when we started, the ductwork was way up here. So I should probably mention that's another way to move duct. You can just simply click on the duct and just move it with your mouse. Now you want to make sure, again, you move it so it doesn't break it. So if I move it down here, Revit's going to yell at me. I'm going to hit cancel. Now what I can do is I can just move it to a point where it's about right here, and now it looks good. So now I have this small little gap between my ceiling and my ductwork, so everything fits. Okay, that's looking great. Now I'm going to hold shift and we're going to rotate around again, and we are good to go. Let me move my screen a little further back so you guys can see both views pretty good, and that looks great. So what's next? Well, let's talk a little bit about different ways to route some duct. Now, another command that I think is underutilized is the connect into command. Now, connect into allows us to draw ducts in a 3D view very simply. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So for instance, let's say I had this main up here. I'm going to delete these two pieces up here. So let's just use my Windows selection, and that allows me to delete everything inside of the window, so I can kind of target these right here and hit delete. And now I've deleted those pieces right there. Now connect into allows us to just connect this air terminal into this piece of duct right here. So what I can do is I can click on my air terminal and I can go to connect into up here and click on it, and then I can click the main and it will automatically draw the duct up to this main. So I clicked on it and it automatically drew that piece of duct for me. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to connect this one. Now right now, if I try it, it's not going to really work. So if I click this guy and I hit connect into, I can't click this elbow, and if I click this main, it's going to be funky. See, it's gonna yell at me because it's like, I can't do this. So I'm going to hit cancel. Now what we would need to do is we need to prepare this connection. So what I could probably do is I could probably just delete this all right here, hit delete, and maybe I could just connect this piece to this piece. So I can click this air terminal, hit connect into, click this piece, and now we have those connected. So now I would need to connect this one to this one, and that's where I could either drag my main right into the duct, so I could just drag it in, and it will basically connect everything like it had before. So connect into is a very powerful tool. It allows us to connect things in 3D. So let's also go over how we would just connect this using, standard techniques. So I'm going to select all my ductwork again. Now there's a couple different ways I like to select the ductwork. You could tab into everything right here, click, and I could basically, I don't want to hit delete because I have air terminals in here, but what I can do, and this is another command that I hope everybody's using, is the filter command. I use this pretty much 90% of the time. So I'm going to filter my selection down to only my ducts and duct fittings. So I'm going to deselect air terminals here, click OK, and now I only have the duct run selection selected. So I'm going to hit delete here. Now we've already created this system, which was kind of cool. So we actually have that system intact, but I want to create the ductwork to everything. So what I would want to do is I usually want to start either at my air terminals or at my main piece of equipment. It really depends. So I'm going to start at my main piece of equipment, and then we want to start drawing some ductwork out. So I'm going to click this little button right here, and it's going to draw a 14 by 12 duct out of the unit. Now, if I go right to the left, you can see Revit's yelling at me. It's saying, hey, you can't do this. There's not enough space for that elbow. So again, we're always having issues with the amount of space for elbows. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're using Revit, okay? So this time, let's be a little more strategic. I'm going to click this button right here to draw the 14 by 12 duct. Before I start drawing, I have to bring the duct up higher so that way it will be able to draw that elbow. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to go to middle elevation, and right now it's set to 4'4". Let's set that to 9'6". So 9 space 6, enter, and now we can start drawing our ductwork. So I'm going to draw it off to the left here, just like that, and look at that, it drawed the ductwork perfectly. Now I'm going to do is I'm just going to go off this way and maybe draw it to a place right there. That looks good. Now, luckily with Revit, we can always make updates later. So even though this ductwork's not perfectly centered between these things, we can just kind of guess right now and always change it later. So now what I would want to do is I wanted to connect my ductwork to this air terminal. So I can also go from my air terminal to this ductwork. So I'm going to click on this button right here, and that's going to create duct from my air terminal. And if I go to the left again, it's going to yell at me again because I don't have enough space for the elbow. So I'm going to hit escape here, hit cancel, and then let's try that again. Let's create the duct, and this time we'll bring it up to 9'6", so 9 space 6, enter, and then we can kind of bring that ductwork up. So you can see Revit will kind of snap for us. So right here it snaps, and that's great. So I'm going to go ahead and snap it to here and then connect it here. And look at that, Revit automatically made these connections for me, so everything's looking great. Now I want to start drawing some ductwork again, so I'm going to click this guy. Let's zoom out so we can see this. We're going to click draw duct from here, and remember we have to bring it up to 9'6", so let's make sure we do that first, and then we're going to bring it over. Now we don't have anything to connect to right here. We can't connect to this elbow, that doesn't make sense. So let's go ahead and we'll connect it to, I don't know, we'll just have to connect it somewhere here. So let's bring it up to 9'6", and we'll click, And what we have to do, so here's a little tip for you guys. Anytime you want to go from an elbow to a T, you click on the elbow and Revit will allow you to add a T to either side of this. So if we add a T here, it will add a T going this way, but that's not what we wanted to do. We want to add a T going to the left. So we'll click on the plus here and now it's added that T. And now what we can do is we can click on this piece of duct and just drag it into this piece and boom, we've created that duct. Now, this method was a little different because it created this extra piece right now because it had to go from this bigger piece of duct to this smaller piece of duct, okay? So maybe we don't want to do that. Maybe we just want to go straight from this big piece to this small piece like we had before. So we could delete this piece right here and also this piece, and now we could make that connection right here, and Revit will change the size of this T automatically so everything works. So that's looking really good. Now, once we have this main drawn, we could just go ahead and draw from these air terminals up to this piece. So we could click on this and go to 9'6", 9'6", and then just tee it right into this piece right here. But honestly, my favorite way to do this is I like to use a pre-existing piece of ductwork. So I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to go to create similar. And what's nice about the create similar command is it will create the ductwork that's the same size and at the same elevation. So that way we don't have to type in 9'6" every time. So we can click on create similar. It already starts at 9'6" and it already starts at the right width and height of my duct. And then I could just go right here and then we could go over here. And again, we're having trouble with that elbow. We needed to create that T or that cross first before we made the connection. So let's do that. Let's click on our T. And anytime you have a T, you can also make a cross by hitting this plus button right here. So now we have this cross set in place. Again, we'll go up here and we'll use the create similar command and we'll go from this piece of duct over here and we'll connect it in. So as you can see, that took a lot longer than when I just automatically made everything.